Some are calling it unprecedented public engagement. The people of Turkey have repelled a bloody coup attempt. Many experts are now analysing its effects on different sectors. What about Turkish sport? How does that suffer? Or does it suffer at all? We talked to Akif Cagatay Kilic, the Minister for Sport and Youth. You're watching TRT World, and this is One on One. Akif Cagatay Kilic, thank you very much indeed for talking to TRT World. Now, as the Minister for Sports and Youth, what was going through your mind when you first heard about the military coup that was underway at that time?
Now, of course, the first indicators that a military coup attempt was going underway came to us in Samsun, in my constituency. And of course, the first thing that comes to your mind is what are we going to do to prevent this from happening? And of course, the act that was being taken or was trying to be taken is actually treason against your own state and your people. It's not only against the state, it's also against your people, because a military coup is something which brings your country under a lot of stress and tarnishes the international image of your country. And so what we're trying to do is actually to try to control the situation, try to understand what's happening. And once we knew that there was an attempt on a military coup, straight on we were trying to, after the president, as you know, came out and he said that everybody should be going into the streets and into the squares and make a stand against this attempted military coup, and also the prime minister. So that was, after that we just went into the streets with everybody from the people. I mean, there were of course very young people there as well. And we were trying to send a clear signal that we were not going to accept any kind of military coup attempt that was going to take in Turkey. And I think we succeeded in that in a very, very strong manner. The Turkish people showed the world how democracy and how the rule of law and the constitution is protected under such a threat and such an attack. And of course, many young people also took to the streets. They were demonstrating against the military coup. They were throwing themselves in front of tanks, in front of armed personnel, which was disguised in military uniforms, but actually they were themselves terrorists, as we see them, because they betrayed their uniform, they betrayed their country, they betrayed their people, and in that manner, it's very clear that nobody in Turkey is in any way supporting or has supported these kinds of acts or these people.
And many people are describing the reaction of the general public as unprecedented.
Yes.
Youth and youth development is part of your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel when you saw all these youngsters take to the streets and, as you are just describing, lying in front of the tanks and so forth?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel a sense of optimism, or what were you thinking that time?
The first feeling that you get in such a situation is pride, because you feel that you belong to a nation, to a people that is rising up against terrorists and bandits in this manner, which are trying to destroy your constitutional rights, your democracy, your rule of law, your elected government, your elected president. They're trying to overthrow all these institutions, on all these people with force. And with force they have gathered, and by that I mean the material that we're using, which was gathered with the taxes that the people paid. So they're using the people's instruments, which are there to protect the country and the people from outside influences, anyway, military influences, against the people. Now, seeing people and youngsters who have been questioned in the past, as you know, there is a lot of discussion going on if the young generation of today is a Y generation, which is apolitical and it is not taking part in political struggles or debates. And I think on that night, on the 15th of July, on that night, the young people of Turkey, from every political persuasion and from every political party's followers, showed the whole world that the Turkish nation and also the youngsters and the young population of Turkey is standing by democracy, by the rule of law and the constitution. And I think, of course, the first thing you feel is pride, but then you get this sense of, yes, we are going to stand together with all the people and everybody against this. Of course, it's your duty, it's your duty towards your constituents, it's your duty towards your country, it's your duty towards your people, and it's your duty towards your history to stand against these bullies and these terrorists who are trying to take apart your state apparatus and trying to put pressure on your people and get away their civil rights.
What sort of an impact do you think this coup attempt has had on Turkish sport?
Look, during the time when this happened, I was in, like I said, in Samsun, in my constituency, and we were opening, together with our foreign minister, we were at the opening of a inauguration of a golf course, which was built in Samsun. And during that time, in next year in Turkey, in 2017 in Samsun, there will be the Deaflympic Games, Olympics, being held. And there was a organization right on that day going on in Samsun, an international organization, which was going to give the start of these games and these Olympics. And the clock was going to be started 2 days later, which we did actually. So sports was not affected in any way differently than Turkey was affected in the whole. And that was that during that night, everybody from every persuasion and thought and ideology stood up against these military coup attempt. And of course, in many cities in Turkey, sports events are going on as planned, without any problems. Yesterday, we had the race in the Bosphorus in Istanbul. There is an annual race which was the 28th anniversary yesterday, which is between the Asian and the European continents. That's how we portray it, and it is like that. I mean, from the Asian side of Istanbul through the Bosphorus, you're swimming towards the European side of the Bosphorus, and this was the 28th race, a swimming race in the Bosphorus. 2,000 people took part in it, and 800 people who came from abroad, international participants, were there. So it was very, very joyful, and it was very strong. Also, we have as you know, in our tradition, oil wrestling, and the 655th games regarding, in this sense, the oil wrestling finals were made yesterday in Edirne, which is the most western city of Turkey, on the border. So all these events are going on without any problems. There are some international football matches which will take place in Turkey. There were some requests from foreign teams that they wanted a, so to say, guarantee that there's no security issue in Turkey, which there isn't. So we gave this in written declaration as well. But what I want to stress here is, against things like this, against a military coup, against democracy, there was an attempt. So we have to stand together. Everybody who believes in these values should stay with Turkey without any ifs and buts. You know, there has been a lot of talk of, okay, we are against the military coup, but and if and so on. No, there's no buts, no ifs, no anything. If you have to stand against a military coup if you're standing with democracy, if you're standing with rule of law, if you're standing with civil rights, and a country which has a very long history of elections, a very long history of parliamentary democracy, and a country which has, for the first time, an elected president. You know, our president is our 12th president, but he's the first elected president in the history of Turkey, of the republic. So we are standing by our values. We are protecting our republic and our nation. So everybody should stay with this without any hesitation. If you put in a word like if and but, you have to do this and that, then you are trying to get some other signals, I believe.
Speaking of ifs and buts, there is this growing feeling that there is this double standard when it comes to Turkey and other Muslim countries. For example, when emergency is imposed in some Western countries,
yes,
the reaction is different to what we are witnessing now. Do you feel that way?
That was something I was going to tell you as well. Look, this summer there was the Euro 2016 Football Cup, the European Football Cup. It was played in France, and you know that there were very, very horrendous terrorist attacks in France. We condemned them, all of them. We stood by France. Our officials, our president, our prime minister, we ourselves went to France in support of terrorist attacks in the past. But the Euro 2016 football championship was played in France under the state of emergency. Okay, and there were armed personnel in the streets in Paris, in other cities, which were patrolling the streets with heavy machine guns. Now, we didn't say that there was any problem with these kinds of things. We didn't say that we shouldn't be going to France because there are security issues or security fears, because everybody has to stand against terrorism together. That's what we believe. And that's what we want from our European friends and our international friends as well. Stand by Turkey, stand by democracy, stand by the rule of law, and that's what we're asking you. That's what we're trying to do. Yes, we have declared a state of emergency in Turkey, but this declaration of state of emergency is against these terrorists, this Gülen organization, which is trying to, or has tried to, get control of the state apparatus. We're trying to, and what we're doing is, we're using these state of emergency proceedings in order to clear the state system and clear the apparatus of the state from these people who have been given their souls and their minds to something else rather than the state system.
We've been getting statements from European countries, and also there have been statements from the United States, basically telling Turkey to make sure that civil liberties are protected and so forth, when some critics would say that there was a disproportionate response from many of these Western countries post 9/11 and some other events. Do you feel such imbalance in response perhaps creates this resentment in Turkey and other countries?
I think the time has passed to be not critical of statements that have been given in the recent days and the last week. Yes, we are critical about these, and we are feeling that there are some statements which we do not accept. Okay, the problem is the following. Look, if anything like this, God forbid, should be happening in any other country, we will be saying the same things. Why are the people in the streets? Why are the Turkish people in the streets, in squares, and trying to protect their own way of life? Why are they there? They're there to protect democracy and civil rights and the constitution and the elected government and the elected president and all this system. The Turkish Republic is protecting itself. The people are protecting their republic. That's why we are in the streets. That's why when the president said people should be going into the streets and protect the rule of law in Turkey and democracy, that's why they're there. Now, when you come and say to me, from any other country, somebody, a politician, whoever is in a position of public service, and is saying, well, you should be taking care of these and that. That's why the people are there. The Turkish people, on the night of the 15th of July, have given the world a lesson in democracy and rule of law. And that's what we are going to do, and that's what we're doing today. So if there's anybody coming and saying, trying to be critical about what we're doing, we don't accept this. And interestingly, you can have your opinions on it, but you cannot threaten Turkey.
And interestingly, there have been statements coming from some countries, pushing forth conspiracy theories, suggesting that as if this was somehow staged. How do you feel about that?
Look, because I'm in a position of public service, and I'm also part of the Turkish government, there are some words I will not be able to use here, but I can tell you only this. If anybody is saying that this coup is staged, or this coup was in some way orchestrated by something else, trying to do something else, I'm just saying to them, you should be going and checking out what you're saying, and you should be checking the streets. You should check what's happened in the night of that, and this is just a comedy. If people say that the coup attempt in Turkey is not real, then they don't know anything about what's happening in the world. I will not be taking them seriously in the future. I'm saying this very openly, because what happened in Turkey is that some elements of the military, not all of them, some elements within the military who are not part of the military, as we believe, and they have disgraced their uniform, because the Turkish Army's uniform is, for us, the army is very important. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get rid of these viruses, if you will, which are within the system, and also in the police force. Now, they are very strong people who stood against this within the army, the police force, and the state apparatus, which have gone out very openly and said, we are not accepting this in any way. But if anybody says this is something which is staged, then they should be going and checking what they're saying. And like I said, I will not be listening to them what they are going to say in the future, because they don't know anything about realities in the world.
Now, we find terrorism affecting the entire world.
Yes.
Turkey's been saying that for some time. We find instability in other parts of the world, even some of the most developed countries. However, after this event in Turkey, we find statements coming in suggesting that there is fear, and there's an atmosphere of fear, and that it may affect Turkey's prospects of bidding for upcoming international events, sporting events in particular. How do you view that?
I don't think so. I don't know who is saying that or who's thinking that. But Turkey is a country which is very strong. As we said, it has shown that it is a strong country. The people are united. Look, when you look into things that are happening in the world, terrorist attacks happen in every country. Unfortunately, they shouldn't be, and that's what we're saying. We should be standing together against terrorism from any kind of terrorism. And we should not be labeling any terrorism with anything else. Terrorism is terrorism. If you start saying Islamic terrorism, this is wrong. We reject this phrase. Terrorists are terrorists. End of story. If they claim to be following a religion, we don't accept this. Our religion is a religion of peace and prosperity, unity. Now, if anybody goes and says we are going to change or anything in this calendar, in sporting calendar in Turkey, I would be very, very frustrated with that. And I haven't heard anything yet. There was only one championship which the date has been changed. I can understand that. I mean, if you want to, I didn't want that to happen even, but if you're saying, okay, we have to have a few weeks in between because of the organization, things that are happening in some other countries, maybe. I'm just saying maybe. I'm not saying I accept it, but it's, other than that, there's no rescheduling, there's no change in normal events in Turkey. Like I said, we just had a very big international event in Istanbul. We're going to have, again, other events which are going to happen without any problems in Turkey. And there were events which were happening last week.
What are your hopes from Turkish athletes at the upcoming Rio Olympics?
We are taking part in the Olympics in Rio, which 110 athletes have the right to take part, but because of international rules, 105 will be taking part in the games in competition. We are hoping for. We have our charts in front of us. We think that in some branches, there's some sporting events, there will be very, very high possibilities of a gold medal, and there's also a very high possibility of our athletes competing in other branches, which will give us some silver medals, some bronze medals. But the important thing here is that we are going to take part in Rio. We are going to take part in the Olympics. Our country, our athletes will represent their country. So there's no problem there. Everything is going as scheduled. They're right now in preparation. They're doing their preparations for Rio, so they're training right now. They're in training camps at this point, all the athletes. They're preparing themselves mentally, physically for the Olympics, which is going to be a very big sporting event, a very big sporting festival. And we hope that it will go smoothly in Rio, because as you know, there have been some talks about some things that have been happening in Brazil. But as far as I have heard from the recent information, there's going to be no problem regarding the Olympic Games. And we hope it's going to be a good festival, and we will be there.
What is your ministry's position on foreign-born athletes competing under the Turkish flag?
Anybody who is coming and wants to compete under the Turkish flag is welcome, but of course we are not in the position to take everybody. Of course, we're looking into their performances. We're looking into how they will be competing in international games and international organizations. But if somebody wants to come and wants to compete under the flag of Turkey and for our international teams, for our Olympic team, of course they're welcome. But we are also we had a problem in recent years with some sporting events regarding some athletes regarding illegal doping. We have taken care of this. We have tackled this with any kind of very strongly. There's a zero tolerance on doping policy within Turkey and in the sporting community. We have stood very strongly by that. The international anti-doping agency has acknowledged this very, very strongly. They are standing by us, and they're also putting forward that Turkey is on a good track. These have been also put into the reports of the IOC and WADA. So we have overcome this, but there were some in this transition period. We had to take some extra measures regarding some athletes, and in this sense, we have also taken athletes from foreign-born countries. But this is part of every sports event. In any country, there are athletes who are competing under certain countries' flags, which were not born in those countries, which have been taken into their Olympic teams later on. This has happened in the past. This will happen in the future. Of course, our first aim is to get our own athletes, which have been, by own I mean Turkish-born athletes in Turkey. We have changed some sporting systems in Turkey, which will be providing us with a better and more stable system for the future. We have already started to prepare for 2020 for the Tokyo Olympics. We have a Olympic preparation system now, which is going to, I think, give us good results in the future. We're also working together with the Ministry of Education in order to have the education of these athletes in a certain way. So it's going well, and it's going to be better.
What are your thoughts on the new structure of Turkish football?
By the new structure,
They're calling it the Kulüpler Birliği.
that is something which has been there for a long time. It's not a new structure. There are some talks going on between the Football Federation and the Foundation for Clubs, which are playing in the First League of Turkey, in the Premier League, if you will. They are debating about certain changes they might have to make in the administration side of football. It's something which they're going to be doing among themselves, and then they will come if there needs to be a change in the law or changes to be made in articles. Then of course we have to take this to Parliament, because it has to go to Parliament. If there is need be for that, we will sit down and discuss this as well. But the first thing is that they debate among themselves if there have to be any change.
Let's go back to, we were talking about the sense of pride you felt,
Yes.
the response from the people. We've had even the opposition parties come out in support, unconditional support of the government, and they seem to be united on the issue of protecting their democracy and the mandate of the public. Do you feel that's going to affect the sentiments of the football fans, especially when they're in other countries representing Turkey or playing for Turkey?
Well, when our teams were playing internationally in international tournaments and on club level as well, you could always see that everybody is supporting the teams which are coming from their home country. Because, as you know, we have a lot of Turkish-born people and Turkish citizens living abroad in Europe, especially 3 million nearly in Germany, and there are a lot of people who are going to matches and sports organizations which are happening then in the European atmosphere and in some other places. Yes, the political sphere, as you know, Parliament was unfortunately bombed by these terrorists as well. So the Parliament was open during that time. Members of Parliament, who I have to acknowledge here, were conducting the parliamentary session under fire. They were not yielding in any way. They were not giving up Parliament. And Parliament, as you know, is the representation of the people. So, once again, to our international friends, I'm saying the Turkish Parliament was attacked. And the Turkish Parliament stood together against these terrorists. So, yes, we are going to see, I think, in the future also, in the political sense, some kind of different understanding. But in the sports sense, of course, this will. It has also changed in the future, in the past. The recent years have shown less and less problematic scenes in football matches, in other branches, in basketball, in volleyball. So unity is coming together, and hopefully this will bring people more together.
In the recent days and weeks, we've been witnessing this Turkophobia, this increase in Islamophobia. In the referendum in the UK, we saw Turkey was cited as some sort of a threat, as if 79 million Turks are going to swim over to the UK. Does that affect the sports fans? And that links closely to the European Union membership, because there's been a lot of talk on that. So I want to touch on that as well. What are your thoughts on this European Union membership process, stalled process, and do you feel that it's going to increase agitation within the Turkish sports fans as well as the youth?
We have to look into this in the following. It was President Erdogan, then as Prime Minister Erdogan, who started the negotiation process for full membership of the European Union. I was then working with him together. So we have to see the following. We have been working on our European Union aspirations very strongly. And we have done this in a manner which we have founded a ministry which is only responsible for the EU and EU negotiations. We have a chief negotiator who's taking all these aspects in hand, and he's doing the negotiations with the European Union by coordination. Part of the government. So we were always very strong on our aspirations for the European Union. But I have to ask our friends in the European Union, who are now critical of Turkey, and By the way, I say it again, you can have your ideas, of course you can criticize certain things in Turkey, but you cannot threaten Turkey. You do not have the right to threaten Turkey, because what we have done in the past is we have done our homework. I will ask them the following: what have you done in the European Union? Have you treated Turkey as you should have treated Turkey? We have always said Turkey is an equal partner of the European Union. We are not a country which is on the sides or somewhere sitting there and trying to become in any way a member. We are an equal partner of the European Union. So you have to, when you negotiate with us, when we negotiate with the European Union for full membership, that is how you should be treating Turkey. We have not stalled the European Union membership process. The European Union itself stalled it. There are some European Union member countries who, on political grounds, only on political grounds, not technical grounds, and not on the European acquis, have stalled and have tried to prolong the process of Turkey's European membership. Now I'm going to ask them the following: when we were saying, don't do this, let's work together, let's get Turkey into the European Union faster. That's what we are aspiring for, because all the values of the European Union we do see. What were you doing? You were trying to stall it. Now that's what I'm criticizing them on. And then coming out and trying to criticize or even threaten Turkey, no, that is something that we don't accept.
Akif Cagatay Kilic, thank you very much indeed for talking to TRT World.
Thank you.